Yeah. Hello, this is the second part of the interview with Julian. So what we're doing now is to present, prepare for Julian to prepare a intellectual time map. So basically, we do that for the interview because you have just reflected on, very concisely, within the 45 minutes about your intellectual development and how that comes into your doctoral supervision. So we want people to kind of use a range of textual, visual, and any kind of creative form to prepare what we call intellectual time map. It's considered a map, but actually it doesn't map everything. So it's just using, because you only have limited time, and also because it's only one thing, it doesn't represent everything. So we want people to foreground what they want to foreground as representing their researcher identity, for example. So you can start with a symbol or a meme or like a concept or or any kind of visual drawing, and then you can start there, and then maybe you also want to use some keywords to illustrate what you mean by that, or you can combine a few symbols to make something together. And you've seen those examples, so you can either finish it today or you can come back with another version if you want, but not necessarily have to.
Okay, so what I might do, so this is what I'm going to do. You're welcome to take a seat whenever you want.
Yeah, no,
You're
I'll
welcome.
stand.
This call might take two.
That's right.
This narrative thing that I'm supposed to write, I'll do that afterwards, maybe.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is, so remember, before the recording, I was saying to Jean that I couldn't quite make sense of this project, right? Which was about my intellectual journey, history, and the mission of being more inclusive about Indigenous knowledge systems in HDR supervision. But for me, it's HDR and undergraduate as well. So for me, the differentiation is not very strong. Yeah. And what I'm going to do now is to try and make sense of how I made sense of your project.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Because I was like, I wasn't quite sure how the two made sense. Yeah. And so what I'm going to try to, and so where I got to last night when I was thinking about it was, maybe it makes sense in that, let's imagine for a minute that I'm someone who is deploying Indigenous knowledge systems or sympathetic systems of thinking in my teaching or supervision. Let's say that I was that person, which I'm not claiming to be. How is it the case as a non-Indigenous person I have come to do that based on my intellectual history, and how have I made sense of it and incorporated it, right, and made the links? And so that is how I've made sense of your project, although you will have a completely better and more thorough understanding of the sensical nature of it, but that's how I came to understand the value of what you were doing, and why the question was framed in this way. So what I'm about to, I guess, do on the board is to tell a little bit about, I guess, where I come from in terms of intellectual history, right? But also how I feel the Indigenous knowledge stuff makes sense, because as we were talking about as we walked along here, one of the things I want to avoid is having this notion of, here is this course or subject that we're doing, and this is the useful theory, and here is also the Indigenous sort of perspective, which we do because we're obligated to, and then we carry on, right? So that kind of dynamic is one I wasn't so sure about, because the value or the utility of it doesn't seem very strong coming through. But then the part of me going, well, why does it have to have value? Isn't that very neoliberal? Is like a little voice in my head. It's like, well, I guess that's a good point. When I was thinking about this last night, it's like, okay, well, I can't reconcile everything. I haven't worked out an answer to all my questions. And if I think about it long enough, internally I am, at least, I have inconsistent beliefs that, logically might not make sense together, but still I hold them somehow. Yeah.
Same here.
So, so how to do this? How long do most people take to do this?
It really depends. Some people take 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Okay.
Others take several days.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll try and be more compact for you, because I mean,
Yeah.
if I talk for too long, that means it's more for your transcriber to go
That's
through.
all right. Yeah.
All right. So when I first thought about it, my initial thought was like, oh, what is the central thing, right? But I think for me, for various reasons, there's not going to be a central thing. But so one of the perspectives that I think is important for me, which I've been teaching for a few years, is systems thinking. Systems thinking. And so the reason I came to this in the last 5 years or so was because I teach international studies or global studies, and I had studied, for example, anthropology, and anthropology is sort of a history of thought, and I was like, well, international studies that doesn't have that kind of depth of history, right? And I kind of, in some ways, felt a little bit sad for some of our students. Not that any of them, I think this way, that they don't have that sort of intellectual tradition, maybe. Although there would be if you ask different people. And so it's like, what would be a perspective that kind of came before that was intending to be kind of holistic in perspective? And then I remembered when I was studying anthropology, we looked at Gregory Bateson, who's well known for cybernetics. Cybernetics now has a few different meanings, but cybernetics systems thinking is what cybernetics became. And then systems thinking now sort of has a close cousin called complexity theory. But I don't really teach complexity theory too much because I think it's too complicated, and you get everything you need from systems thinking. At least for the time being. So systems thinking, it tends to be kind of holistic, and the thing I try to emphasize in my first year class is that we tend to think of things as things, right? So this is a whiteboard marker, that's my recording thing, and so on. But what systems thinking I think pushes us towards emphasizing or focusing on is not things, but their relationship with things. So it's like, yeah, okay, so this is a table, but the table only makes sense in relationship to the chair. And the chair only makes in relationship to, I guess, the shape of our bodies, or right. And so try to not think about things, but try to think about the things in between the things. So that how things are connected in a totalistic, in a holistic way. And then the other, I guess, things that are important for me are kind of like Michael D. Jackson's work on existential and phenomenological anthropology. Right. So these existential, for me, is like this is what drives people to do the different things. Whereas phenomenological perspective is about understanding how people experience the world, right? I can talk about another time, but in my view, like we place great emphasis, rightly so, on like critical thinking and critical perspectives and critical whatever. Whereas I think these are kind of, I would almost say non-critical, because you're taking how they understand the world as the starting point, not critiquing it so much, but trying to appreciate it from that perspective. So criticism is still very important, but yeah. So, but again, what is important here, or for me, is these sort of pre-verbal, pre-rational drives or states that kind of inform what we then do or say, and so that tends to be kind of where my emphasis is. So again, not looking at the surface phenomena, but trying to understand like what's behind it. And then and for me, I guess also the Taoism, or the Taoist perspective that's kind of popular in the West, not the kind of Taoism that my father practices with the temple and everything. So it's more the kind of the Tao Te Ching type Taoism, right, of and Buddhism and sort of non-self type stuff. And I think Buddhist perspectives of the world can be quite different to Judeo-Christian ones as well. And then also here, Schopenhauer, who's in short is a repackaging of Buddhism anyway. So so that is again important in trying to, because I suppose some of the it's about a perspective of the world, right? But I think although Buddhism is pessimistic, it doesn't mean it's unhappy, right? It doesn't mean it's negative. It's sort of pessimistic in its own, in the way that it makes, in a sense that many people wouldn't appreciate. But let me, in terms of something, one of the other things that's useful, or is important to me now, is this notion of grounded optimism, right? And again, this is also related to having a holistic view of the world, because we will have 1,000 things happen to us in the day, but the thing that's going to bug us when we're trying to go to sleep at night is the one crappy thing that happened, right? And so that's in some ways not a very holistic way of looking at your day. And so grounded optimism is about not denying that the crappy thing happened. It's about recognizing that there are positive things that are happening, but it just doesn't go into our consciousness very well. The media doesn't want to report it because people don't click on it in the same way as like the lousy news. So grounded optimism is about trying to get the balance right. In the same way as I'm tempted to eat ice cream and chips, right? And whereas we need to make an extra effort to eat the carrots and the broccoli, or as the case may be. And so grounded optimism is very important. It's connected for me in terms of like this notion of being holistic, and also again this holistic perspective of systems thinking too. And so one of the things that this is what I'll talk about next. Is also different ways of understanding the world, which is of relevance to research, and you will know inductive or induction, inductive reasoning, deductive, and you don't need to explain, deductive. But then there's another one, and you get 10 points if you know the next one.
No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this one is the one which I find myself using a lot. But it's also hard for me to explain why it's useful, although I can. If people want to give me 5% more AWAM, then I can write a paper on this. AWAM for the recording is my workload allocation model.
Okay.
All right. And so this one I get from Michael Jackson. And in my opinion, for your project, could be important, right?
Oh, wonderful.